morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our November 18th, 2020 Governor and Executive Council meeting. And just as a reminder, for those who haven't already, just if you could at least silence your cell phone so that we can hear the discussion from the commissioners, the councilors, and even members of the general public. We do have 3 items from these new microphones are interesting, aren't they? Better than the old ones, sorry, I'm getting used to it. We do have 3 items from the Business Finance Authority today, so they will, as always, those items are subject to a public hearing. And as a reminder, if there are any members who wish to speak from the public pertaining directly to those items, and if there are folks joining us on the phone, as a reminder, and we'll review this when we get to the items themselves, they can virtually raise their hand to speak by just pressing 5* when it's time to address each item. And we'll, folks can just be patient, we'll make sure that we get through everyone if there is anyone to speak on that in the proper queue. Also, as noted, Councilor Pignatelli is not joining the meeting today, so all of the votes will be on 4, not the traditional 5. And if, with that, if everyone would just join me. Sure, with me, I just want to do a reading, and then I'll lead us in the pledge. Heavenly Father, thank you this day for the day that you have made. We ask for your wisdom and guidance as we serve the great citizens of New Hampshire. Help us be examples of your love and grace to those around us today. In your name, amen. And if you'll join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. So moving forward, again, we don't during the trying times of COVID, we don't have any performances or proclamations or commendations for this meeting. I think normally we would be pardoning a turkey. So unfortunately, there will be one more turkey on the dinner table this year. We haven't found, maybe, who knows, there's another week, maybe we can figure something out. But as of right now, we haven't found a pardon candidate. I guess they weren't serving good time this year. You can ask Commissioner Hanks about that later. But I will call this Governor and Council meeting to order. I'd ask for a motion to begin by asking for a motion to approve the meeting minutes from the October, was it the October 21st meeting? Is that really the last? We haven't been here since October 21st? I'm sorry, I thought we had. This is from the October 21st, 2020 meeting. So moved. Second. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion or request to change any items? Part of that? No? Okay. I love how you went and pressed that button thinking that was going to solve all the problems. It's okay. It's a new system. We'll work it out. Seeing no discussion or request to change the meeting minutes, all in favor of approving the meeting minutes as presented, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the meeting minutes are adopted. Next, from the Office of the Secretary of State, we have our civil commissions. Could I please have a motion to confirm the list of civil commissions? Second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving the list, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the list is approved. Are there any nominations to place onto the list of civil commissions? Okay, seeing none, the matter of civil commissions is concluded. Moving on, we have a few resignations to accept today. As the Assistant Commissioner of the Department of Corrections, can I please have a motion to accept the resignation of Benjamin Jean of Nottingham? Second. We have a motion, second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the resignation of Captain Jean is accepted. From the Community Development Finance Authority Board of Directors, could I please have a motion to accept the resignation of Janet Ackerman of Franciston? Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The resignation is accepted. From the Community Development Finance Authority Board of Directors, could I I have a motion to also accept the resignation of Martha Rush Mueller of Exeter.
So moved. Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of accepting the resignation, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the resignation is accepted. And that concludes our resignations for today. Moving on with our list of confirmations, just a variety of folks here. But I begin by having a motion to confirm Richard Silverman of Hampton to the Board of Accountancy.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Silverman. Seeing no discussion, all in favor of approving this confirmation, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, Mr. Silverman is approved. Can I please have a motion to confirm Jody Bell of Manchester to the Board of Acupuncture Licensing?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Jody Bell is approved. Can I please have a motion to confirm John Durald of New London to the Board of Dental Examiners?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion on Mr. Durald? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? John Durald is confirmed. Could I please have a motion to confirm Jotham Otterson of Manchester to the Board of Licensure of Interpreters for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Jotham is confirmed. Could I please have a motion to confirm James Parker Concord to the Board of Licensure of Interpreters for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing?
So moved. Seconded.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? James Parker is confirmed. Could I please have a motion to confirm Gail Hanson of Colbrook for the Connecticut Lakes Headwaters Citizen Committee?
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Gail Hanson is confirmed. Could I please have a motion to confirm Steve Norton of Concord to the County State Finance Commission?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Steve Norton is confirmed. Could I please have a motion to confirm Peter Kendrigan of Brentwood to the Mechanical Licensing Board?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And Peter Kendrigan is confirmed. Could I please have a motion to confirm Timothy Emperor of Stark to the Nash Stream Forest Citizens Committee?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Tim Emperor is confirmed. And finally, could I please have a motion to confirm Norman Harris III of Guilford to the New Hampshire Waterwell Board?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion?
Yes. Thank you very much.
Sure, Russell. How's the press run?
Yeah, I know Norman Harris, known him for many, many years, because I'm in the water well industry, and he's a customer of mine, and I'm thrilled that he's been nominated, and I am going to recuse myself, but I wholeheartedly support him, of course, and hope the rest of the executive councilors do as well.
Okay. Thank you very much. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And 3 to 0 to 1 to 0. He's confirmed. There we go. And that concludes our confirmations for today.
Governor,
Yes, sir. Councilor Franz.
one little minor thing on John Giroux,
Yes.
his address, if we can drop one of the threes Little Sunapee Road is 1333.
Oh, okay.
Just minor, but
Sure.
something was sent out, so I want to make sure.
Oh, we'll make a note to change the proper address. Sorry about that. Thank you. So moving on, we have some a few nominations to read into the record today. To the Board of Medicine, I nominate Michael Barr of Nashua. To the Community Development Finance Authority Board of Directors, I nominate Jared Reynolds of Concord. To the Current Use Advisory Board, I nominate Tom Thompson of Orford. As the Director of the Division of Emergency Services, Communications and Management for the Department of Safety, I nominate Mark Doyle of Merrimack. To the Volunteer New Hampshire Board of Directors, I nominate Renee Perot of Deerfield and Justin Cates of Nashua. And to the New Hampshire Municipal Bond Bank, I nominate Mark Dakota of Thornton. And that concludes the nominations for today's meeting. So moving on, we have our consent calendar. I begin by asking for a motion to adopt the consent calendar.
Second.
Motion and second. Any questions or requests to remove items for further discussion? Okay. Seeing none, all in favor of adopting the consent calendar as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the consent calendar is adopted. It is approved.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you. So moving on for our items for the Department of Health and Human Services. I now ask for motion to adopt agenda item 9 for the Department of Health and Human Services, the Office of Finance. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Oh, Councilor Valinsky. A variety of folks from HHS today.
Good morning, Commissioner Lorcia Vanessa.
Thank you. Item 9 involves shifting funds among various budget line items, including related to the Sununu Center. And I'm just wondering if you can tell us if the state, through the Sununu Center, is contracting to take children from other states already or in the future, and if so, where that funding goes. Does it go right into a Sununu Center dedicated budget, or is it becoming general funds money?
I'll have Karen Rounds and Bill Rosen speak to that.
I'm wondering, since we're having people come and go, are we wiping down that area and wearing masks or not wearing masks?
Sure, do we have any? Yeah, one more, we'll get ready.
Hi, Joe Griffin, Director DCYF. In terms of a potential contract to serve children from another state, there's conversations about that that will come to a future GNC before it will be finalized. But there are conversations about potential doing that going forward.
And does that money then go to the Sununu Center line or into general funds? I understand there are discussions with
So it would go into the FISD budget. We would need to go to fiscal committee to accept those funds. So there would be an item, and it would come to GNC as well.
Any idea how close we are, how soon that was done?
Relatively soon. The contract is likely to come before the fiscal year.
So if that contract comes to fruition, does that impact the transfers related to Sununu Center that you're asking us to approve now?
Probably not. I mean, potentially, it would just change maybe what lines we apply the deposit to. right? So right now, we need funds in overtime and other areas, so we would reevaluate when those funds were received, what class lines we might need to put those funds into.
With the funds coming in, they wouldn't be restricted anymore,
No,
so you can allocate as.
correct. I mean, in theory, it should be allocated across SYSC because they're paying a rate to pay for everything in SYSC.
Right.
So that's how we would budget it in the future. But for this interim period, we would probably just put it wherever it was needed within the budget.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you. Any further questions on this item? Okay, seeing no further discussion, all in favor of item 9, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 9 is approved. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda item 10 from the Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Financial Services.
So moved.
Seconded. Motion and second. Any discussion on item 10? Okay, seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 10 is approved. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda item 11 from the Department of Health and Human Services from the Office of Health Equity.
So moved.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this item? Okay, hearing no request for discussion. All in favor of item 11, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And item 11 is approved. I now ask for motion to adopt agenda item 12 from the Department of Health and Human Services for the Division of Long-Term Supports and Services.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion for item 12? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of item 12, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And with that, the item is approved. I now ask for motion to adopt agenda items 13 through 16 from the Department of Health and Human Services from New Hampshire Hospital.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Councilor, we'll start with Councilor Zelinski.
Item 14, the temporary staffing contract.
Yes.
I don't understand why this is sole source. Could you talk to that?
I have Heather and Joe Christie on the phone from New Hampshire Hospital. I'll take a stab at it. We're looking to staff the past building, which is the old Philbrook building. So the ability to procure, go through an RFP process would be very time consuming, and we don't have time for that, but I'm going to ask Heather and Joe to weigh in on that.
Do we have Heather or Joe on the line? Joe, are you with us?
I am. This is Joe Christie. I'm the CFO for New Hampshire Hospital. Good morning, Governor and council members. In addition to the reasons that the Commissioner just mentioned, there's a few factors that really warranted or pushed us to pursue a sole source contract. One of them is really just about timing. So we're really hoping to use this service as a way to recruit permanent staff. So those temporary staffing agreement is really designed to be a temp to perm conversion. And we're really hoping that we can use this to help increase our recruitment efforts so that we can work toward filling the various vacancies at New Hampshire Hospital and at the PATH Center, allowing us to increase capacity really across both facilities. The second part was Maxim has really kind of demonstrated in other contracts with the state that they can deliver. They also have pretty extensive experience in recruiting for behavioral health experience. They've engaged on over 270 behavioral health staffing engagements and recruited over 800 full-time positions in the behavioral health sphere. So They seem to be a very good vendor. They have a local office. They understand the New Hampshire labor market, and we felt really confident that they would be the best vendor for us. And we've also started to do some interviewing this week. They allowed us to do some interviewing even before a contract was executed, and we actually interviewed 8 candidates that we would be willing to make an offer to if this contract were to be approved today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Further questions or discussion, Council President?
Yes, on item 13, there's a request for higher payment, and I wondered, when I looked at item 14, it is both of them pertinent to the New Hampshire Hospital, how much is actually going to the paychecks of the future employees? If you're hiring a service to retain, to temporary hires.
Is that, sorry, would that be?
So that
Is
would
one
be
to
Joe,
do?
but I do believe, Counselor, item 13 is the 20% base hourly compensation increase. That goes directly to the employees, the mental health workers of New Hampshire Hospital. That's not going to our decision firm.
Well, thank you very much. That's what I needed to know. Thank you.
Further discussion, Councilor Gatsas?
Thank you, Governor. On number 9, how many employees do you plan on hiring for 2.4 million?
The total number of employees? Sorry.
I didn't hear you.
Total, sorry,
How
well,
many
you repeat your
employees
question.
that you're going to hire for $2.1 million?
So number 14. So Joe, how many employees are we
No, I
hoping to
think that's
recruit?
number 9. No, 14, I'm sorry.
Number 14.
Correct.
So, this is Joe Kersey, and I apologize. Is the question how many positions this contract is based on?
Yes.
So we designed the contract to essentially reflect 9 months worth of funding for 35 mental health worker positions. We chose 35 because at the time that we were doing that analysis, we had 35 vacancies. So that's kind of how the funding was arrived at. And it was for a 9-month period because of the temporary assignments for the mental health worker is a 9-month assignment, after which we're hoping to have them apply for a state position, assuming that they met our expectations in that first 9 months.
So that's 9 employees?
Sorry. If I understood Joe, about 35 employees for the next 9 months.
So what are we currently paying employees there now?
Joe, the wage scale for mental health workers. Go ahead, Joe. For
Are you with us?
Sure. I apologize. I didn't want to overspeak. So we did an analysis on essentially the total hourly compensation for mental health workers compares to the hourly rate that is being charged, or the hourly rate being charged in this contract. And when we did that analysis, they come out to be incredibly close to each other. There is some variation, obviously, depending on what labor grade and step the mental health worker positions come in at, as well as what benefit options they choose, whether it's a single health insurance plan or a family plan. But we tried to do a rather conservative analysis, and when we compare those two figures to each other, it really comes out to be within cents of each other on a per hour basis. So we really feel that from a cost perspective, this is going to be a cost neutral contract, potentially even a cost saving, although that's not a primary objective of our effort. But we do anticipate this being cost neutral on an hourly basis. The pay rate that Maxim will be paying directly to the the contracted mental health workers are in line with what we pay within the state. I think that the primary value we're getting out of this is that they're a fully dedicated recruitment firm that we can work with, and they have numerous individuals looking for appropriate candidates, and they seem to be able to deliver that as well.
Do you have a wage rate, Joe, that you can quote for, I think it's a mental health worker for?
A wage breakdown, is that what you said, Laura?
Yes. Like what will Maxim be paying the mental health workers?
Maxim will be paying, just one moment, I'm just pulling up the document. So Maxim will be paying between Maxim will be paying employees between $17 and $23 an hour, and the state of New Hampshire pays between $12.87 and $23, I believe it's $23.90 something is the top limit. The uppermost limit for mental health workers is $29.30.
Why would any employee want to work for less money through a contract?
I think the range is there, right? And it really depends on the full compensation package. So what we often see for state employees is because we have a better insurance, we may pay less of an hourly wage, but we have a better benefit package. So it really just depends on what the employee is looking for.
Not sold on it, but go ahead.
Further questions, Councilor Valencia?
I think I'd like to ask Councilor Gatsis's question in the reverse. What are the fees to Maxim on this out of the $2.4 million?
Leaning on you on that one, Joe. Do you know the fees to Maxim?
I guess we don't know the direct fee to Maxim other than to say the way the contract is structured is we will be paying a hourly rate to Maxim. So it's really based off of how many individuals they're able to hire and the hours that those individuals work. And so in that regard, we're not paying a fixed amount for varying levels of staffing. We pay for the staffing as it's provided. The rates from Maxim are, depending on the shift, per employee is between $32.25 and $34.25. And when we compare kind of the average of that over the types of positions we have and the shifts that we have, again, to the total hourly compensation of a New Hampshire hired mental health worker, that average is $34.01 for Maxim, and it is $32.62 for the state of New Hampshire. So again, very, very close total hourly compensation rate between the two. But again, they have clearly been able to identify candidates for us. We've had 11 interviews, and 8 of those individuals we would be interested in and excited to make offers to, assuming this contract were to be approved.
Thank you. Councilor Prescott?
Yes, thank you, Governor. When you mentioned the fees to Maxim as an hourly rate and then the amount of $32.25, can you explain what the unit of measure is for the $32.25?
I apologize, Councilor Prescott. Could you say that one more time? I'm just having a hard time on hearing on my end.
Right. You mentioned that the fees to Maxim are an hourly rate. So for each hour, Maxim gets a certain amount of money. And you mentioned that certain amount of money was $32. Is there a unit of measure for that $32? Is that per hour?
So this is, Commissioner, I can answer that.
Good. Thank you.
Okay.
So Joe, I'll take that question. So that's a very typical, it is an hourly rate, and out of that hourly rate comes the employee's wages and benefit package. So if the employee's getting paid $17 an hour, and let's say their benefit package is $5 or $6 an hour, that all goes to the employee, and then maximum, in addition to what they're paying the employee, they put their admin fees, their overhead costs, their margin into that hourly rate. So that's very typical. Almost all of our temp contracts that we have for any type of clinical setting will have that type of hourly rate at which they have to pay their employee out of.
Thank you very much. That's very clarifying.
Thank you. Further questions on any of these items?
Okay.
Councilor Gassis, please.
Explain that to me again, because what you're saying is that employee is getting paid $32?
No, the company is getting paid $32 an hour. The employee will get paid $17, $18 an hour, plus their benefit package. The rest is overhead costs, operating costs, and margin.
Okay, so you don't know what the employee is getting paid, and you don't know what his benefit package is.
We have the average, what they're going to compensate the employee, yes. We don't know the cost of the benefit package. But what we're saying is that when we look at a state employee for a mental health worker and we do their total compensation, so when we look at what we pay them and the benefit package for a state employee, it's about equivalent to what we're going to be paying Maxim per hour. So it's a budget neutral contract.
Well, it might be budget neutral, but it's not budget neutral to the employee, because maybe they don't offer them benefits.
Yeah, perhaps, which is why we're doing a temp to permanent contract, so that if they do like working for New Hampshire Hospital, they can come on as a state employee after 9 months.
Why wouldn't they come to the state of need?
If they were going to do that, we wouldn't have to hire a contracting firm to help us recruit.
Do you have to pay them anything if the employee becomes a permanent employee after the temporary 9 months?
Joe, is there a sign-on bonus or a recruitment bonus that we pay after 9 months?
There is not. The only potentially additional fee is if we wanted to hire them earlier than 9 months, which there's no reason for us to do so, but there would be a percentage fee, I believe it's a 20% percentage, essentially for early hire, just because that 9 months factors for Maxim's overhead and profit. But there is no additional sign-on fee or anything to that effect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion on this or any of the other items? 13 through 16. Okay, seeing no further discussion, all in favor of items 13 through 16, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, the items are approved. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 17 and 18 from the Department of Health and Human Services from the Division of Economic and Housing Stability.
Second.
Any discussion? I'm sorry, Councilor Gassis?
General discussion, Governor, on really doesn't have anything to do with 17, but I know that the homeless situation in the city of Manchester, with the folks that are at the courthouse, right across the street is the old police station, and it's vacant, totally vacant. We used to use that to house folks when the weather was really, really cold. I probably think that for 6 months, the owner of that building would be interested in moving those folks in there if there was a way to supervise them. But that's a possibility, and I think that's something the state and the city should look at to move forward. Because there's an awful lot of money that's floating around for homelessness.
Yes, and so the way the homeless funding works across the state is it's based on the continuum of care. And the continuum of care for Manchester is governed by a group of providers in the city of Manchester. It's not governed by the state. They get federal money directly from HUD to take care of their homeless population. We have the balance of the state. We do not have the city of Manchester, and we do not have Nashua. But we have done outreach with Manchester to just help with the current situation for sure. On one of our numerous calls with the city over the last several months, the old police station did come up on whether we could help them fund the purchase of that building. Although I do like your idea better, which is to perhaps approach the owner about a lease, but we still have the issue around having contracted services in that building. The state does not run any direct service providers. We would have to contract with one of our providers in the city of Manchester, or the Manchester Continuum of Care, which is the organization that is truly responsible for this group of people, would need to contract with a service provider to supervise the people in that building. But we are working on this pretty much 8 to 10 hours a day, every day. I have Chris Santinello here that can answer more specific questions about the city and the homeless population.
Well, I know that the police were down under the Amoskeag Bridge supervising that homeless tent shelter. I don't know why we couldn't put them in that old police station. We had supervision at the city level, but I don't think any money was coming from the state, but there's an awful lot of money that's coming from the state right now. And we should be looking at that building for a 6 month, because it's going to get cold. And when it's 30 below, that building used to be used to house folks.
Yes,
It's something we should look at today and find a way to work together to get folks there to supervise. I know that if you called the owner, Frank Rich, he'd be more than excited to rent it for 6 months so that the space is occupied. And I'm sure that it's probably not as soft as the ground that's by the courthouse, but it's certainly a lot warmer when it comes January.
We are always willing to partner with the providers in the city to help find temporary housing for the homeless, but we can't be the only 2 feet in this fight. We need partners there. So the city needs to come to the table and help us with those things. The city or the Continuum of Care gets direct federal funding to do this. We do not. But we are willing to come to the table to partner with this, but we need them there too.
Well, how do I get you both to the table?
Talk to the city.
We've been sitting at the table the whole time.
Yeah. The city's made it very clear that they will not be partnering with us in the solution for the individuals on the state land. So we're working with it. Sorry, my mask is on. The state has been very clear. The city doesn't want to help with these individuals on an individual basis, and as the commissioner pointed out, the housing, the wraparound services provided, we'll take care of it. We'll do it. But it would be nice if the city actually participated in the process. But they've made it very clear they want nothing to do with it. Councilor Walensky.
Yeah. Thank you. I just wanted to follow up on Councilor Gatzis' questions. The contracts that we see, if I remember correctly, are all federally funded. Does the state put money into the homeless housing and wraparound programs, and where do we see that budgetarily?
I'm going to let Chris break it down
Sure.
because she has the most specific.
And if you could mention the state's homeless plan, that would be great.
Hi, Chris Santinello, Director of the Division of Economic and Housing Stability. There are a number of different funding streams that go, I'm afraid to get too close, and that go, and I'm short, so I can't really reach over, that go to support individuals who experience homelessness in the state. The majority of those funds are federal funds, as the Commissioner mentioned, and that is done through the Continuum of Care. Federal rules prohibit crossing of funds between Continuum of Care. So that's a really important caveat to put in all of this. There's the Manchester Continuum of Care, there's the Greater Nashua Continuum of Care, and then there's the balance of state for which the Department of Health and Human Services has responsibility for. I do not have all the numbers in front of me, but I can get that to you after. In addition, we do have some state general funds that we use across the state, and that assists to help with actual shelter funding. On top of that, the state of New Hampshire does get some dollars through SAMHSA, and then we use that for mental health outreach, and we contract out with mental health providers for that. We have a small contract in the city of Manchester for a part-time outreach worker. In addition to that, there are emergency solution grant funds, and that comes from HUD, and we use those statewide primarily for outreach, some other wraparound type services, permanent supportive housing, which we provide across the state. Recently, with the CARES Act funds, the department got close to $8 million of emergency solution funds grant, and we have used those statewide. The majority of that funding has gone to support outreach, because we know that there's a lot of people who are not in shelters and need support with outreach. We've invested in outreach across the state, including the city of Manchester. In addition to that, we put some dollars into rapid rehousing, which helps people get into supportive housing. But we know that with the housing market, that's a little bit difficult. So then again, we put close to $3 million into the shelter systems to assist them with capacity needs, to assist with decompression, social distancing, and a number of shelters are coming up with unique solutions on how to support individuals experiencing homelessness and partnering with their communities and cities and towns and parks. I can get you a full breakout of that, I just don't have that off the top of my head.
Is there a formal state plan to address homelessness?
So that is something that is older, and so we are working right now with the governor's office, with current providers, to think about how do we do a state plan for homelessness. I have talked with a number of partners within the state, because we know that we can't do it ourselves, and that we need to be thinking about the whole continuum of housing and the whole continuum of support for the state of New Hampshire. And so we are working on that, and I'll defer to the governor.
Only to say there is a state plan. It is an active plan, and we've been talking about, I've already brought new folks onto as part of that group, kind of refreshing the group to take a look at it from providers and stakeholders, because that's always, I think, how you get the best plan. And within 3 or 4 weeks, we've told them that it's not something we want a long-term blue ribbon commission on. We need action. So the idea is that the previous administration didn't update it. I don't think it's been updated probably since back in 2006, in the very beginning of the Lynch administration. So we'll bring in a whole new team, and not just re-up it, so to say, but I think, as Chris very clearly pointed out, and rightly so, take a whole approach at not just putting words on paper, but actually making sure that it can be operationalized and outlining the responsibilities of not just the state. The state traditionally provides a lot of the resources. And again, as Chris pointed out, and as Councilor Gatz has pointed out, the amount of money the state has spent on this issue is absolutely unprecedented. But obviously, making sure that we have that bridge to the local partners and the local communities to make it happen. So I think we should have a new plan moving forward within a month or so.
So my understanding is the plan's from 05, 06.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, so it's, this is really a criticism of you, but do we have time? Not all the CARES Act money's been spent. Do we have time to update this plan for the new approach and still meet the 12/31 deadline?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's absolutely what we're going to do. I think it's a great idea. And again, we put a lot of the millions and millions, not hundreds of thousands, millions and millions of dollars of CARES Act money. I know just directly related to the issue in Manchester, I think there were about 50 individuals that were on that state property originally. I think it's a couple dozen at this point. We're working with them one-on-one. And again, we put the CARES Act money out there. We put a lot of money to all the cities and towns, for COVID-related costs. So if there's issues with this, in many ways, this can be seen in the expanded homelessness issue across not just the state, but the entire country, is definitely a result of COVID, to be sure. I believe as of today, Manchester has spent $0 of their allocation on this homelessness issue. Zero. So we're continuing to provide the funding. We'll put the team together, and we're going to work with folks on a one-on-one basis. And I love, Councilor Gassis, I think you have a great idea. There's a lot of opportunity for facilities within Manchester. We were talking to the state team was talking to an individual today that was there and said, look, he actually, this individual had a job and he can't go too far, so we're going to try to make sure that they have housing within, whether it's within the city and the transportation piece, that obviously has to come with it. So we're really trying to work with everyone on a one-on-one basis to make sure we're kind of meeting their needs and expectations with those wraparound services. It isn't just about putting folks in a building, but you can divide. I think to your point, the building's the most important piece, right? The housing piece is really the most important piece, and then you can work to add those services in. So I think the team, hats off to the entire team, and I know Chris and Landry and Katya and the whole police, the whole team at HHS. I think it's just done a phenomenal job over the past few days to actually work with these folks on one-on-one. Ms. Hatfield, I don't think she's here.
She's working the phones right now.
Yeah, she's been on the ground there. And Commissioner Quinn and the state police that have been down there just working, I think, in a very positive way. So we're making progress there, but I think to the Councilor Valinsky's point, is an important one, you need to make sure that you kind of update the strategy, right? Because this can happen again, or you can have a Colts network and happen in Keene or whatever it might be. And so just outlining that and identifying those gaps, I think, in the system right now. The money's there, but there's obviously gaps in the system with the provider, working to make sure everybody's working with the providers to get where we need to go.
Is there any way, Governor, that the CARES Act funding can go to leasing the building, and it would be the city's responsibility to maintain the building for the folks that are there? I can only tell you, we didn't have funding the last time. I just kind of, in my own little way, told the owner that we're going to use the building for the homeless folks because it was so cold and he didn't say no.
Yeah. Early on, I think there could have been, I think, a larger opportunity for CARES Act funding early on for acquisitions like that. Unfortunately, the dollars, lease arrangements, they could really only be used through December 31st. Unfortunately.
Well, we could prepay it, couldn't we?
We tried that with the fence, no. I've tried, it's a great idea, but they turned us down in a couple other similar
But if we're
situations.
spending, it's going to be expensive, right?
What a lot of communities have done as part of our strategy to meet this homeless situation using the Gopher funds, they have used Gopher funds right up and through the end of December. And then many our funds, the Emergency Solution Grants funds, are being used after that, and the city does receive its own allotment of Emergency Solutions Grant funds, so there could be a possibility to leverage the different resources to come together for a longer period.
Which is
We could increase the monthly payment of the CARES Act, right? If he was only looking for, let's say, I'm using a round number, $1,000 a month for 6 months, why couldn't we pay him $6,000 for the month of December?
I'm going to look to Mr. Formella and Mr. Caswell, because we have played this, try to find every loophole possible with federal, and these are the best in the country, frankly, at finding the loopholes with federal government stipulations.
I don't know about that.
Yeah. I think there's up to a certain point you can do it, to be sure, but unfortunately, again, you have to have a willing partner at the city level, and that does not exist right now. It just doesn't on this issue.
I think it's worth noting that the city did receive almost $2 million in emergency solutions grants, and that those funds could definitely go to you to pay for a lease like that.
Yeah, they have the money. It's right there.
Well, Commissioner Quinn, have they started moving out of that area as of yet?
We had one move within the last 48 hours, but as the governor said, we're having good conversations now, so they're continuing the discussions. But
I don't think anybody's moving. Just, as a...
Yeah, I'll if I may, Chris.
So I've been getting updates throughout the morning, and there have been a couple of moves. The department actually is using one of our transportation vendors to assist people that want to leave right now. We do know of a couple individuals who have family members that they're going to go stay with. So they are on it right now. There's some police officers down there. There's representatives from mental health. The outreach team is going out at noon, so they should be out there today. So people are trying to do this from every angle and have been since May. There's a number of encampments, and there's phenomenal outreach teams. And I want to say the staff on the ground, through the providers within the city, are incredible, and they are continuing to go out and try to connect people. So we have to be kind of assisting people where they're at, supporting them and trying to wrap the right services around them.
Yeah, and if I may, you're absolutely right. The providers have been awesome. The providers, FIT and the whole group, Manchester Community Mental Health, I mean, they've been terrific to work with. They've been great partners with the state. They really have.
I used to sit on that continuum of care committee, and they used to do their homeless count in January or February. Now, I would hope we all understand that the homeless people are pretty smart. They can find $20 to get on a bus and go to Florida and spend the winter there, where it's a lot warmer. So why they've never done a homeless count in the middle of May to get an actual count of the number of people? Because I don't know, do we have an idea of what the number of homeless folks in the state of New Hampshire is, and what that homeless count is in Manchester?
So right now, I don't have that handy off the top of my head. The point-in-time count is a HUD-regulated count, so we do not dictate. There's lots of things that we do not get to dictate with HUD. And I don't want to give a misquote, because that would not be a good idea. I can give you the most recent numbers that we have, and I can do that after the meeting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And if you need any help to sit down with somebody in the city, please call me.
We will, and I think I'm going to ask you after the meeting for the name of that person that you mentioned that owns that building. So
I'll give it to you right now, Frank Rich.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions on any of these items? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of items 17 and 18, and signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the items are approved.
Governor,
Yeah, yes, Councilor Grant.
before Chris runs away, something I've already voted, this is just an informational thing for just a second. So I just took a second to look up the homeless count, which was done in 2019, was 1382. Do we know, because I mean, often we focus so much on Manchester. Obviously, this has been a huge issue because like all of the mayors and most of the mayors signed a letter concerned for their communities. In some of the small communities, we know it's not as apparent. In fact, there's 3 people living down by the river, that.
Yeah, there's a lot of rural homelessness.
I think we should not just focus, that it's just, I don't mean you, but in general, we should not just focus on one issue. It is a huge state problem.
I fully agree with you. And one of the things that the Bureau of Housing Supports did in this past year is we really increased our training and outreach to really try to find a number of people who are experiencing homelessness on that day in the rural parts of the state. So we put a lot of time and energy to really get some good numbers. And so as soon as those numbers are released, we will share those. And we do have a, which I can get to if you're interested, I think it's an 8-year by county the number of people experiencing homelessness. But the people that are rural are typically underreported, but we put an effort into doing that this year.
Thank you. I would appreciate that.
Okay, yep.
The other thing as well.
I will get that out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Governor, can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
It's a little bit off subject, but for the vaccines that may come up in the future, I had a constituent call who is part of the disabled community and is concerned about that community being, made priority on that list of when the vaccines are distributed. And wanted to know if that was in the calculus of the distribution of vaccines, including the disabled community.
So we are waiting for recommendations from both the FDA and our national infection disease experts on who the vaccine will be most effective for. Everything we've seen in the press so far is that it's somewhere between 90 and 95% effective. So when we look at prioritizing the population, assuming we're going to get a limited number of vaccine doses, and understanding that every person needs 2 doses to be fully vaccinated. When we look at getting a limited number of doses, we're going to prioritize certain populations that we consider the most vulnerable, that have had the most significant negative outcomes from COVID-19. So I think it would be no surprise to say that nursing home residents and the people that work in nursing homes are probably going to be on the top of that priority list. But in addition to those folks, you're going to have people in other congregate living settings, all healthcare workers that work with any type of COVID patient, and first responders, so fire, EMS, and police. So that would be your first round, so it would be the most vulnerable, and then your critical infrastructure employees in the state. Second round, which is your general community testing, will be, targeting and designating priority for people with disabilities, people that have underlying conditions. We expect that about 75 to 80% of the population will get vaccinated at their physician's office or in a healthcare system, and that the public health response will be between 20 and 25% of vaccinations. So for the vast majority of people, it's going to just involve going to your doctor to get the vaccination.
So priority would be not your first round for the disabled community, it's going to be the second round, and then it's just a matter of who's first in line, is what you're saying?
Well, it depends on where they live. So someone in a congregate living setting doesn't have the ability to socially distance themselves away from the other people in that setting, right? So that's where we've seen outbreaks, we've seen negative consequences. They're going to be priority. So if you have a congregate living setting with people with disabilities, which we have several in the state, they will be in the first round with the priorities with the elderly. What comes in the second round are people that are living in the community and have the ability to socially distance and stay home if they can.
That's a great explanation, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to items 19 through 21. Can I get a motion to adopt agenda items 19 through 21 from the Department of Health and Human Services, from the Governor's Commission on Alcohol and Drugs? Second. There's a motion and second. Any discussion on any of these items?
Discussion on 20?
Sure. Sure. Council Gadsden. Council Bielanski.
I just want to say I'm refused on 20.
Okay, Council Bielanski is going to recuse himself on 20. Thank you, sir. Council Gadsden, do you have a question?
20, again, it involves Harbor Homes, and I have not seen any financial statements that we were told as a council that we would be receiving on a regular basis, and I guess I understand with these COVID situations that sometimes we forget. But I don't.
So, do you want to? I can check in with Meredith Police. I can tell you that we're still doing oversight on the contracts that they have, and I will find out when the last time that you received the report and make sure that you get an updated one. But we're still doing the same level of oversight that we have been doing with this vendor.
That was over 2 months ago.
Okay. And so typically we look for quarterly. I mean, that's what we would typically see is a quarterly report from them, but I can check in with our QA and our integrity group and see where the latest one is, if you don't have the latest one.
My understanding was we were supposed to get monthly reports.
I'll let Conscious seems to have some information around that.
So, good afternoon, Council and Governor. For the record, I am Katya Fox. I'm the Director of the Division for Behavioral Health. And in anticipation of your questions, I did check in with Meredith and our team, and we do receive monthly reports. The information is my understanding that is not something that we share publicly, but we could do in a non-meeting. And would be able to reach out to you individually or as a group to have a discussion about the particulars. I can tell you that the contract provisions are being met. And so they're meeting their financial ratios, they're meeting their cash on hand, they're meeting all of those certain components that we require.
I guess a follow-up. We can't do this publicly yet. The 350,000 is public funds, isn't it?
Yeah. Right?
Right, so yes, the funding that is being directed there is specifically from the governor's commissioners.
Right, those are public funds, so why can't we have that discussion in regards to the contract publicly?
Hi, Counselor. We absolutely can discuss the contract publicly and the amount of public funds in that contract. What Katya and the Commissioner are suggesting is that we cannot share the financial statements. Those are confidential, even though those financial statements would include this contract amount potentially, right? The full financial statements are confidential. And I could let the Attorney General speak more to that if you needed.
I guess the finger is being pointed over here.
Councilor, would you like for us to arrange for a non-meeting for you to review those documents?
No, because the last time we went into a non-meeting, I wasn't able to ask questions publicly. This is a public matter. It's before this council. This council is voting for it. And there's no way, we just went through 6 hours and we looked at everything that they had financially and everything else. Why? Because the funds they were receiving were public funds. These are public funds. There's no reason why anybody that has a contract with the state of New Hampshire that we should know where they are financially. None. Zero.
What we oversee is how these contract funds are being used. And what we've concurred is that they're meeting all of the contract provisions for the distribution of these funds. Because they have a state contract, I don't believe it gives us the right to go in and look at their full financial books. But the Attorney General could speak to that better than I can.
Fingers over here. You want to answer?
Give it a shot.
You should walk a little slower.
So there are a couple ways to solve the problem. I mean, we have obviously conveyed this information to the council in a non-public setting, and I understand the council's reticence on that. We could provide the information through our office in a context where we're giving advice to the council and keep it that way. Confidential under the attorney-client privilege, or the other option would be to go to the vendor and ask if they'll release the financial information to the council. But there is, based on the 10-second conversation I have, I'd be reluctant to say that we can give you the information right now. But those are the kind of avenues we could pursue to solve the problem.
In every contract, if I can, Governor, in every contract, is there a discussion in that contract about not releasing information publicly? Every contract. Or is it just this one?
So this is a unique situation because of the ongoing concern with respect to Harbor Homes. This kind of information is not typically information that the department would take in. So that's why we're in the situation we're in, because of the concern we've had with Harbor Homes and its financial stability.
Well, I guess it's now out there public that it's financial stability. I didn't bring it public, I think you folks did. So I would think the taxpayers would have a concern of what that financial stability is if we're giving them more money.
We put stipulations and contract provisions in the contract to ensure that they're meeting the provisions of the contract and providing the services that we're contracting with them to provide. Beyond that, yes, we can do financial reviews, and if we are hesitant or if we don't believe that they are in a financial place that we feel secure to give them additional contracts, we can make those decisions. But we've given them thresholds to meet around cash on hand and things like that, financial thresholds with our increased monitoring, and they're meeting every one of those. So that's what we report, is that in our enhanced contract monitoring, we've given them financial provisions to meet. They're meeting all of the ones that we've provided to them. Therefore, we feel that they are stable enough financially to accept the state contract.
The cash on hand threshold, does that include a credit?
I don't know that.
I think the last time we looked at a statement, it did. Correct, Senator, Council Prescott?
We had this conversation, and when the line of credit was removed, the threshold was still met. However, if we haven't gotten the answer, is the threshold met without the line of credit, we really don't have the answer that says we should award this contract. We need an answer without the line of credit that says we meet the threshold for cash on hand. Is that true? We meet the threshold of the contract existing with Harbor Homes in other contracts without the line of credit.
So I do believe that whether or not they have a line of credit is confidential and would need to be discussed in a non-public session. So I cannot comment on them directly, but I would tell you is that a cash on hand, I don't want to speak specifically to the cash on hand ratio, but generally ratios are set by general standards, right? And general standards would include line of credits. So to exclude a line of credit from a ratio would put it at a different standard than we would hold other vendors to, just in a general terms. But if you wanted to discuss their financial statements in detail, like a line of credit, you would need to do that in a non-public session.
Why don't we do that?
Yeah, may I go?
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Does the time period between now and the next meeting hinder the performance of taking care of New Hampshire if we put this on the table, this item?
So, Councilor Prescott, you should check your phone. Last time I understand you got a whole bunch of texts when questions were being asked. But the next council meeting is in 2 weeks or 3 weeks?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Okay.
The second.
Yeah, and so we're going to be coming with an additional item for the facilitating organization, of which Harbor Homes they oversee, or they are the facilitating organization, with the state opioid response funds that have supported the recovery organizations across the state, and that I anticipate to be coming on December 2nd. So if that is the case, then that would be an opportune time for you to consider both contracts. Any delay is always a risk, and does have a financial impact. We've been hearing from the advocates and from the centers that they took a over 30% cut as a result of the current contract, and that is true because we did not have the federal funds or the Governor's Commission funds yet to present to you in contract. So yes, it has an impact. My big concern for the organizations is cash on hand. Can they pay? If they don't have in their subcontracts with Harbor Homes, can they pay their employees? And they rely almost 100% on our funding, and their fundraising obviously has been deeply impacted by COVID. So yes, there is a risk, but if it means that the contract will be more favorably received after you have that opportunity, rather than turning it down today, then especially with only having a four-member council and having one who's recused, then I think that a delay may be okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, knowing that we have a second contract coming in 2 weeks, I would say this, regardless of whether we move forward with this or not, let's plan on doing a non-public meeting, a session where we can at least, as we have done in the past, where we can at least look at this information, and then the council can choose to participate in that or not, but at least let's make sure it's available so that certain questions can be asked with respect to can be asked and answered while maintaining the security around certain financial disclosures. Would you like to, Councilor Ross? Yeah, sure.
So this amount of money is $350,000, and this is a pass-through to the organizations in our state that are desperately in need of this money. And is there any risk in your mind that this money would not be passed through immediately, regardless of the cash on hand with Harbor Homes?
I can let COPTA speak, but they can't pass through money they don't have.
I'm saying that if we approve this contract today, is there assurances that this $350,000 is not going to be encumbered by a lack of cash on hand possibility by Harbor Homes?
So no, the money would go out for its intended purpose. I will say that the whole idea of having a facilitating organization is that they do some of the administrative work, so it's not just passed through. There is some cost that they have to do the billing and to do some of the other back office functions that they do. But no, they are eagerly awaiting payments.
Very good. So the $350,000 is understood that there's anticipated monies going to Harbor Homes for administration. So the rest of that, you are assured,
yes.
You are assuring the council that it will be passed through.
Yes.
Okay. So I do not have a motion to table.
Okay. Further discussion on this or any of the other items? Okay. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor of items 19, 20, and 21, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any
No
opposed?
on item 20.
I'm sorry?
No on item 20.
No on 20. Thank you, Councilor Gadsden.
Recused on
And Councilor Blinsky is recused on 20. And so seeing that, the item fails. You need three. You need three. Yeah. You need. Well, Councilor, Mr. Attorney General, do you need? I thought you needed three to pass. But if somebody isn't here, does that change?
I think it's a majority of those present.
Majority of those present?
As long as a quorum is present. It's a majority present and voted. And inwards of reasons too. So
Okay.
check out multiple other sources.
It raised
While
this issue.
discussion is going on.
Yeah. That was the issue I was focused on when and not paying attention to Harbor Homes. So
So it's a majority of those present, as long as there are four, which there is. So-
Present and voting.
And voted, and so the item passes. So, That's a big commercial right there. Sorry about that. Our homes can pick themselves off the floor if they're watching this right now. So the item does pass, but let's still plan on a discussion, on a non-public discussion with this one.
And Governor, that would happen on December 2nd? Or is it-
Yes, yeah, December 2nd, I think, yeah.
We should plan and be coming earlier to the council meeting?
I think so. I think probably to do it before, because that way any relevant questions can be posed appropriately during the public session.
Sure. I look forward to that schedule.
And frankly, we'll probably have to do another one in early January as well. I mean, this issue's already come up with the new council.
Don't make me sad.
You can phone in from a beach. So items 19, 20, and 21. Thank you. So, I'm sorry, that was my fault. So moving on, I now ask for motion to adopt agenda item 22 from the Department of Health and Human Services from the Division of Children, Youth, and Families. Please note that items 23, 24, and 25 are not currently needed. Any discussion on item 22? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The item is approved. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda item 26 from the Department of Health and Human Services from the Division of Behavioral Health.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 26 is approved. I now ask for motion to adopt agenda items 27 through 35 from the Department of Health and Human Services from the Division of Public Health Services.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion on any of these items? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The items are approved. And, boy, we've gone through the Health and Human Services items pretty quick today. 12:30. And we're on to our second department. We're paying for all those fast meetings that we had over the past couple months. So, and the agenda's been a little short. So that's okay. All good questions, all good stuff. How exciting. Civics. It's cool. Okay, moving on to the Department of Transportation. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 36 through 46 for the Department of Transportation.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on any of these items from DOT?
Discussion on 37 and 46.
We have a question on 37 and 46, and I believe the Commissioner is joining us this morning.
Should prepare to give us our presentation on 4A, as was promised. And I'm like a little...
We haven't gotten to this 4A yet. Oh my God.
Promises are made, promises should be kept.
Good morning, Commissioner.
Good afternoon, Governor. Good afternoon, Councilor.
Oh, right. Seriously.
For the record, Victoria Sheen, Commissioner of DOT. Thank you, Councilor. Yes, we have made our determination as to how we're going to move forward with Exit 4A. You should have received an invitation to a call on Friday. On Monday of this week, we did brief both the town of Derry and Londonderry our decision. And then we have scheduled a call to brief both of the executive councillors, yourself, Councillor Gatsby, and Councillor Prescott, since you represent the respective towns, and then also a number of the state representatives, as well as both senators who represent the two towns have been asking questions. And so on Friday morning, we're going to have a call to walk you through our proposal and our new time frames to advance the project. But I can confirm today that we, after working very closely with the Attorney General's office and meeting with each of the three teams, we have not found a way to move forward with a design-build procurement. We think at this point it's most prudent to move forward with traditional design bid build. So our first step will be to procure the design services, and we are already working on that to start to advance the project. And then we're going to package several individual construction contracts. We're not going to wait to acquire all of the right-of-way and finalize all of the design. Our hope is to do a phased construction with several contracts. But Friday morning, we'll be happy to walk you through everything in detail. We also offered to both town administrators to go to both town council meetings, so we can publicly brief both the town councils as well as the community on the next steps of the project.
With all due respect, there was supposed to be a presentation to the governor and executive council at this meeting. That's what you told us. That's what you promised. And you're not delivering it.
So I think, Councillor, my commitment was to deliver a decision by this meeting.
No,
Not
presentation.
necessarily a full presentation.
Full presentation with phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and how we were going to do it. Because I look at 37 and 46, and those are procurements for 4A.
So the first step will be to procure a design consulting team to help us advance the design of all phases of the project.
So how many months are we talking about?
Our hope is to be able to bring a contract to Governor and Council in the spring for the consultant services. Part of that procurement will include incorporating into the proposals the consulting team's suggestions on how we can best advance the construction. So that's why we don't have firm timelines when it comes to exactly what each phase of construction will look like. We have some thoughts internal to the department, but we're going to be working with the consulting team. The other thing that has to happen before we can fully discuss openly all of the design concepts that were brought forward during the design build process is we have to pay out the stipend to the teams that participated in that process. Once we...
And how much is that?
It's $125,000 to each of the teams. And so our plan is to bring those contracts to GNC. Once we officially compensate the teams that participated in the process, we then will own all of the technical concepts they brought forward. Then we can talk formally about what those included and incorporate those into the future design. As you had suggested at the last meeting, Councillor Gaskis, we were trying to incorporate as much of the design work that has been done into this point. While we don't have a final design, there was some great suggestions brought forward by the team. All of those that are viable are going to be necessary going forward. But to close out that process, we have to pay out the stipend first.
So, exit 4A, from design to completion is how long?
We would anticipate trying to have the first contract into construction in 2022. As I mentioned, we have to work with the design team to understand what the scope for certain phases should be before we can commit to construction. I think one of the things that came out through meeting with the teams and through talking to them about the challenges associated with construction is the work along Schneider Road. It's a very tight location, and we have some thoughts on how to make construction along that section more efficient, which could shorten the construction duration, but we need more time to explore that thoroughly.
What phase was that in?
I'm sorry?
What phase was that in?
That's the final phase. That's
So
the
why
last.
can't we do phases 1, 2, and 3 and wait on the final phase?
So our hope would be to still advance the bridge construction for the new interchange as quickly as possible. And that's why we are continuing to move forward with the right-of-way acquisitions. We do not want the acquisition of the land to be a barrier to that. Exactly how we phase construction and how we tie in temporarily versus how we tie in the final configuration. Some of those details need to be refined. We don't want to pay twice. We don't want to have, a conclusion of a phase which requires certain work to keep people traveling safely, and then have to go back and reconstruct sections. And those finer details that we don't have information on at this point to commit to a specific timeframe for each phase. But it's still very much our intent to move forward with the bridge construction interchange as quickly as we can, because I think what was driving the cost and therefore the most challenging for the design build team to bid was the right-of-way acquisition, and then the tight geometry and constraints that we're dealing with in what is in phase 3 of the project. I'm still hesitant to say too much more than that until we have, like I said, concluded the payment of the stipend, and it's clear what information is in other departments to share versus what is still confidential since we haven't concluded the final step of the design build process.
You asking for too much confidential information.
Our state procurement laws are pretty robust to protect all the parties, and so
I understand.
we are.
But I guess what I don't understand is that the constituents that are around 4A are very upset, to say the least. I think there's enough money in the budget to complete phases 1, 2, and 3, and distribute that work to the contractors as you see fit. And we can get a shovel in the ground this spring. Waiting until 2022 is unacceptable. We're going to go back to a cost of what I-93 cost us. When I started in the Senate, it was $180 million. And I think you gave me a number the last time we talked. What was the completion cost of I-93?
A little under $800 million.
There you go. And I don't want to see exit 4A go from $60 million to somewhere around $120 million.
And as I've shared, Councilor, the reason we're not moving forward with design build procurement is the price came in $30 million higher than what we've anticipated. We really do believe that we can do things in terms of modifying the scope and doing additional exploratory investigation to more clearly understand what some of the
I understand
design challenges might be moving forward. If we can mitigate those challenges, that will bring the cost down.
I understand phase 4 is somewhere around $27 to $32 million.
I don't know what you're referring to with phase 4. It was 3 phases?
Or the third phase, I'm sorry.
The
Phase
third
3.
phase was the most expensive phase, correct?
So why can't we do phases 1 and 2 when it's least expensive now with the design and build and go forward and work on the third phase in the next 10-year highway plan?
So we are not in a position to be able to move forward under the current RFP. For us to make a significant change in the scope of work would require us to modify the RFP to the point that all 3 teams would have to resubmit proposals as well as costs for the reduced scope. And if we do that, the length of time that it would take to go through that process, it really doesn't offer any significant benefits. We can do things just as aggressively using design bid build as our procurement method, with a lot less risk in terms of potential challenges to the outcome.
This just sounds like excuses of DOT. The price is going to go up.
If I may, just to clear some confusion, and I don't know the answer to this. When, under the design build, the design build that we are kind of moving on from, do you happen to know when construction was originally planned to begin, if we had gone that route?
So the contract would have come before the council this fall. They would have, over the winter months, been advancing the design. The very earliest that they probably would have broken ground would have been the fall of 21. We're now looking at potentially moving forward with the bridge project in the spring of 22. So in terms of actually starting work, we're looking at about a 6-month delay. Which we think is not a significant overall impact to the delivery. Like I said, what we're hoping to do is adjust the scope of work for the later phases, reduce some of the risk for contractors, which hopefully will get the cost down. But we just don't know exactly what the timeline of those future phases is going to be.
And if I might, I think to Councilor Gatz's point, if we keep that delay to 6 months, something reasonable, then my sense is we can probably go forward and not have this exacerbated costs and kind of the inflationary cost of time. When you go beyond a 6-month delay, now you're starting to get to, you know, even with the savings that you have, you can start almost eating back into that savings, unfortunately, if it goes too long.
Yeah, we are very much aware that, as years pass, with the cost of escalation, we want to make sure we deliver this project as quickly as possible. It's always been the department's goal, but we can't do that without being sensitive to the price and making sure that we are stretching the value of the dollar that we're investing.
Councilor Prescott, you have a question? Yes, thank you, Governor. The savings that we're looking for is part of the 30 million that is over budget for this last contract. Is that correct? You're looking to save some of that 30 million that's over budget?
When we advance the contract to the design build procurement, the benefit is usually you can get things done quicker. The downside is we don't have a final design. So if any team is looking at that project, they're looking at the risk factors, what is known versus what is yet to be discovered as you advance the final design. And then there's a cost of that risk. The 3 teams, I really want to thank them for the time that they spent with the department. They were not obliged to be part of the debrief process with us, but they gave us a lot of insight as to how they approached their pricing in particular for this project. So we know what some of those risk centers were. Some of those risks may materialize irrespective of how we move forward. Other risks we think we can mitigate, and the more risk we take out of the equation, the more predictable the project is, and therefore the lower the cost.
So you are saying that the budget that you thought it should come in at, which it did not meet that budget, was 30 million shy of the bids. You're saying that your budget has changed since this meeting, that the 3 bidders actually convinced the Department of Transportation that there is more cost involved than your estimate, and therefore part of the $30 million in savings you think is already built in, that we're going to raise our budget anyway? Is that correct?
We have not done a deeper dive with some of the scope modifications that we are thinking of, which we haven't committed to yet, to understand exactly what those cost savings are going to be. We know we can get this project done for less than the bids themselves. Whether or not we have to adjust our budget slightly, because there are cost centers that we did not estimate appropriately, that remains to be seen. But we are very certain that we can cut costs, especially when we're talking about the later phase programs.
So when you're saying you're going to cut costs, excuse me, Joe, I'm just please. Thank you. So when you're saying you're going to be able to cut costs, you're saying you're not going to be able to cut costs of your first proposed anticipated cost. You're saying that we may be able to cut costs to be lower than the lowest bid that you had on the design bid.
Correct, Councillor. We don't believe our budget is going to be reduced for this project. If anything, we might have to increase slightly, but we certainly don't expect the final cost of this project being in the order of magnitude that we saw with the bids during the design build process.
So we cannot expect to have, by this delay, the 6-month delay, we cannot expect to have a lower bid or a lower cost to this exit 4A. We're still going to have a higher cost of this exit 4A. And can you give me what you think that might be? Would it be 10 million over into this preliminary budget, or is it 20 million over?
I don't think we're going to be close to 20 million. From what I know today, I'm hoping that we can keep the budget as close to what we have in the current 10-year plan as possible, with no more than a $5 to $10 million increase. But like I said, we have to hire the design team. Part of the reason the price we received from the 3 teams was on the higher side was because of some of these unknowns. The sooner we procure the design services to take the work that we have done up until this point and advance it to final design, the more certainty we're going to have about the actual cost.
All right, so you're anticipating that the risk of doing design, bid, build, 6-month delay is worth it, because we're going to save possibly on the final project $40 $20 million.
The other thing that's really important.
Is that correct?
Yes, we hope to deliver the projects for less than what we saw with this first round of bidding. But in addition, with the uncertainty around the federal program, we were fortunate it was a one-year extension of our federal authorization, but we didn't have another $30 million at the point in time that we opened these bids to commit to this project without delaying other parts of our program. That was the other factor. Both we want to save money in the long run. We think we can deliver the project for less. How much less remains to be seen. But we also would have drastically impacted the rest of our construction program if we'd chosen to advance this project and absorb the cost increase that we saw.
Thank you very much. I get a fuller picture.
Thank you, Governor. You bet. Yeah, please, Councilman.
In 1988, legislature put in legislation about Exit 4A to move it forward. So I guess my question is any of these funds going to be used to complete or start another project in the 10-year plan?
So the project is in the approved 10-year plan with the funding identified. Each year we get an apportionment of federal funding, and so we will be de-obligating the funds that were supposed to be expended in the fiscal year 21 timeframe. But that does not mean that we're taking the money away from this project. We have our annual apportionment, but we always honor what is in the 10-year plan. So the dollars that are allocated to that project are protected, irrespective of when it moves forward. We just have to manage the cash flow.
How much of those dollars are protected?
Until the next update of the 10-year plan, all of the money that is budgeted is protected. The department uses that as our roadmap, it's a piece of legislation.
So
We
the
won't
next
take
10-year
money
plan,
away from a project unless
the legislature can move that money.
it would have to happen through the 10-year plan process. We do the update in 2 years' time.
But they could move it, thinking that the project isn't going to be done until 2023.
We would hope to be into construction with at least the first phase before the next update to the 10-year plan would be signed into law by the governor.
That probably would happen to
I just want to say, the state has been very committed to this project. As you mentioned, Councilor Gaskus, this has been talked about for a number of years. We've had, as more of the scope of this project was understood, and in particular, it was advanced initially as a municipal project. It was the towns of Derry and Londonderry that were directing the design, and then the department took it over more recently. The state has, for the last decade, been committed to this project. Anytime there has been a need to increase the funding, there has been very little debate during the 10-year plan process. Including this last time around when we had a significant increase when the department took ownership of the project, and there was no discussion. Those additional funds were added and supported by the House, the Senate, the Governor, and the Council in every phase of the 10-year plan process.
So Governor, what she's telling me is that there is absolutely no way that we could move forward on phase 1 and phase 2. Is there a reason why we couldn't do that?
Yes, there's a reason. Unfortunately, because it's such a large change in scope, you would have all the losing bidders sue us, as my guess, because they can say, well, we lost on a scope of work that you're not committing to. We could have beat that group's price, right? And there would be an argument to be said, well, if you told us it was just 1 and 2, we can do it for lower, because where those companies put in their risk, their cost of risk, which was pretty high in the design build phase, might have varied. So therefore, I think they'd have, unfortunately, I'm with you. I say, I agree with you.
I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, but I think by prepared law, it's such a large enough change of scope that they would have grounds and needs to fight it. And then we're second court. And last time I checked, court makes everything go slower by a factor of 1 billion. So then, it would get even worse. So I think that's what we're trying to avoid.
And I don't disagree with you.
Councilor, we looked at both timelines. We looked at, if we modified the scope, we could keep the design build procurement alive. However, we would have had to reissue an RFP, which would take time to prepare and put out on the street. All three teams that were shortlisted in the RFQ phase, the qualifications phase, would be entitled to submit. They would have to submit new proposals as well, that's a written proposal on their approach to the phases that we're constructing, as well as a price proposal. We would have to rescore those, rewrite them, open the bids, and then bring a contract to Governor and Council. When we laid out that time frame, we don't really save any time. And it's still risky because you're getting a price without having that final design in hand. So we're proposing we go design bid build instead, or we'll advance the design in a more traditional way, and that way when we move to construction, the bidders know exactly what it is they're building and can give us a better price with less risk involved. So we did a deep dive and worked very closely with the Attorney General's office, looking at how we drafted the original RFP and what the procurement regulations were, and all the pros and cons of these different scenarios. But ultimately, design, bid, build, more traditional advancement of this project makes sense.
Further questions?
Still wasn't kept.
Well, it's a semi-decent presentation. We got a lot of it. It wasn't a slideshow.
Do you have any numbers in front of you? Because I don't.
They're in my head. 30 million is the bid.
You're an engineer and I'm not. So.
Yeah. Councillor, as soon as we bring the stipend agreements before you, and we own some of these technical concepts, we can talk.
Can I ask, when will that be done? Because you're right, because we have to basically pay them for the design. We're essentially buying the losing designs, right? So when will that be done?
Our goal is to bring those stipend agreements to GNC either at the next meeting or the following meeting in December.
Although they have to be to Governor Council.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Why is that? Isn't that already in the, because we don't have the contract.
Anytime I
Right.
spend more than $10,000 on services.
No, I get it. I was thinking that it would have been approved if we don't have a contract. Okay. So let me ask this, just what can, and I do appreciate, I think it's a good idea to have the stakeholders and sort of the local folks involved. What can be expected on Friday in terms of a discussion or presentation or however you want to...
So Friday it's going to be a very similar discussion to this, just explain the decision has now been made and the approximate timeline for advancing the design phase, and then commitment to come back to the two towns once we have more of a sense of the schedule.
Will there be a slideshow?
It was going to be...
No.
It will be a virtual call with a slideshow.
Okay. Is it? No, but that, and I'm half joking. I think it's good for people to see the visuals, any numbers, and that you can show, just so people can I think timelines are a really big one. I think Councilor Gassis brings up a great point. I think some assurances that this isn't going to go years and years, get booted years and years down the road. 6 months or something in a more reasonable time frame, I think would give a lot of folks at the local level, some of the folks in the community, some assurances and some sense of, okay, this isn't... I think there's the sense of, well, when the government doesn't do something, they end up just kicking it, to Councilor Gass's point, kicking the can down the road decades, and we'll get to it when someone else finally cares about it again. So just, I think as much as we can show the commitment that the state has to those communities, the individuals, I think to Councilor Gass's, it's a great point. That's going to give them some assurance that we're going to keep it within a reasonable time frame so that they can keep making commitments to tenants or future development or whatever it might be. So otherwise, their entire local development plans get completely thrown out the window.
Is there any reason why we can't do it at your facility up in Concord live instead of virtual?
In short order, we just thought the virtual was easier to coordinate. And we've had great success with virtual public meetings. We've had a number of project presentations performed that way. As I said, we don't have all the details yet, so what we were thinking was we would go to the two town council meetings once we had a little bit more clarity on the overall schedule, not just the near-term schedule.
So if you don't have all the information, why are we having a virtual meeting?
It was more to brief all of the stakeholders. Like I said, there's been both senators, the representatives, there's been a lot of folks calling with questions about what's happening next. I appreciate that this was an opportunity to talk publicly about the next steps, but we were trying to be respectful of everybody in elected office who's been part of this project.
Oh, President.
Thank you.
Governor, I would like to request that you apprise Councilor Gatsas and myself and any of the executive councilor when those town meetings are, and we would be invited.
Oh, certainly. Anytime that we are doing a presentation of the project, we're happy to extend it to all the folks that represent that community.
Great, so I'd like to see that in, an email or something, that'd be great. Thank you.
When did you say you notified us about that meeting on Friday?
I think it was on Monday, after we met with the two towns, and Grace, the town administrators, I think an email was sent out with an invitation. It's 9 a.m. on Friday morning. It's just for state elected officials. Obviously, if we were to have the town council come together, that's a meeting of a public body, which is why we intend to go to the town council secretary to those individuals.
Well, the only things I got was Pembroke to Meredith, Route 106, the L-chip grant.
Counselor, I'd be happy to follow up, just make sure you got the message.
Didn't receive anything from DOT.
It should have been from our legislative liaison, but I will follow up.
And who would that be?
Kathy Mulcahy Townsend. I can make sure that you receive a copy of the invitation.
Councilor Belinsky must have got it.
I'm just waiting till I can ask for a break.
Okay. All right, well, we resend, just resend.
I'll resend.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Any further discussion on this item or any of the actual items on the agenda, which would be items 36 and 46 from the Department of Transportation?
So for the acquisitions, Governor, for 37 and 46,
yes,
that's coming from the funding of Figure 4A. Is that correct?
Is that correct?
There are contract rewards associated with a number of projects on both items 37 and 46. But yes, the acquisitions associated with 4A will be funded with the right-of-way dollars that are budgeted in the 10-year plan.
So within the lines of that piece of legislation, effectively. Okay. Yes. I think that's a yes. Further discussion, Councilor Presser.
Yes, I have a further discussion with the department if I could, and I believe it'd be a great time to have a small break before that happens.
Oh, before, yeah, sure. We'll cross the 1 o'clock barrier. You bet. I'd like to do breaks for once every 6 to 7 hours here. So. Let's do that. So I'm going to suggest we take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back. We'll come back. So we'll be back in 5. Right. Is that okay? Great. Transportation. So we'll reconvene the meeting. Councilor Prescott, I believe, has a message.
Yes, thank you, Governor. And thank you for coming back, Commissioner Sheehan. I have a question that is part of concerns in my district with traffic studies. It stems from the Amazon traffic study in Hudson. And specifically, I'd like to know the difference when the term is used from ITE. What is ITE? Is that the Transportation Institute? Is that it? Institute of Transportation?
Yeah, that's the Traffic Engineering Association.
Yes, thank you. And they have a term, LUC 155, which is a warehouse that distributes directly to the end user. And I've read the description of that, and then there's a LUC 154, which does not distribute to the end user, and it's usually just a transfer station where large trucks come in and large trucks go out. And my question is, when you conduct a traffic study or review a traffic study, what is the difference in the number of cars or number of trucks that you attribute to each of these codes? LUC 155 heading out to a end user, and LU 154 is heading out to another distribution location. So could you get that information for me? It is something very important to my district.
So I can address the question now in broad terms. For each individual site, based on the size of the facility, and the amount of products that they're moving, we're going to have a slightly different answer. But in general terms, when you have a last mile distribution center, those are smaller vehicles coming and going all the time. So using the Amazon model like you described, those gray trucks that are coming to your door, they're carrying a lot less product. They're making several stops to drop off all of those packages. And so that's a very different trip generation than when we have a larger warehouse center where tractor trailers are bringing products where it's going to be staged to then support some of that last mile distribution, but you don't have the vehicles coming and going all the time. Tractor trailers coming in and trucks coming out, it's not necessarily the significant increase on the roadway network that you would see in a lot of the shorter trips.
Right. So if you could do that in layman's terms, I can give you some specifics if you want. I would like to continue the conversation, and I think it's important that the Executive Council would know this as well, because it is all in code and hard to dig out.
And this is, I will say, an emerging analysis as there's been more of this shift to door-to-door delivery as opposed to folks going out to the stores to have more goods delivered directly to the user. For each development, there's been assumptions made and anticipated impacts on the system models, and then those models have been adjusted once we've actually had the system or the new facility up and running and seeing what the impact truly was on the roadway network. The other thing I will say is we do try to work with the tenants. It's not just the movement of the goods in and out of the facility, it's the movement of their employees as well. And so making sure that we understand the trip generation around the start and end of each shift as people come in and out of the facility, that plays into the analysis as well. It's not just the truck traffic and the delivery vehicles.
So you believe that even if there is a transportation division, as you mentioned, what I call ITE, you call traffic studies, even if they do reference an LUC 155 and they call it the last mile distribution, that data is actually in flux.
We're still layering that modeling on top of the existing use of the corridor. So it depends on how congested the existing roadways are, what the current use of the corridor is, how its new use can either complement or cause additional strain on the system. And that's why for every development, as part of the access permitting, we require them to do a full traffic study and show their particular development is going to impact the corridor. And it's necessary to mitigate for the impacts that they're, or the contributions that they're creating. If there's an existing traffic problem, we don't expect the developer to come in and solve that. They have to mitigate for any impacts that are directly associated to their proposed build-out.
Right, I understand that part, but you mentioned that it was, your term was emerging analysis, meaning that once a facility is put in and it distributes to the last mile, this is something you cannot know how it's going to come out until it's actually built and up and running, because it's an emerging analysis that's not accurate at this time?
In all situations, we're using our past experience to model outcomes, knowing exactly where employees are coming from, where the deliveries are to, and how they're going to impact the roadway network. We're always, in the traffic world, you're always forecasting, And we have pretty good track record of getting close to what was modeled and predicted, but it's not always a perfect science. There's so many unique contributing factors.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council President. Additional questions for any of these items from the Department of Transportation? Okay. Sorry, something just, are you not have Ashton out? Are you like Big Cheese?
I am.
As of like a week ago?
As of last Friday, and now.
I'm sorry, I should have said something when you called you up there, which is the president of the new national...
The American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials.
It just hit me as we were about to wrap this up, so that's great. Well, congratulations, and New Hampshire will be better off for it. I have no idea. I have no doubt at all.
It's an honor to serve, but it does give me a chance to advocate for the state of New Hampshire as well as for transportation. I'm looking forward to the opportunity.
Change that federal funding formula, whatever they can do. Talking to you, Pappas and Custer, whatever you guys can do, change that formula, get us our fair share.
If I have to testify before Congress or the House T&I Committee, then certainly I'll be advocating for AASHTO, but also for New Hampshire.
Right. That's great.
Just make sure you spend enough time on 4A.
No, that's great. Congratulations. It really is a very good thing for all of New Hampshire. So with that, seeing no more further discussion on the Department of Transportation item, all in favor of items 36 through 46, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the items are approved. Moving on, I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 47 and 48 from the Community Development Finance Authority. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of items 47 and 48, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The items are approved. I now ask for motion to adopt agenda item 49 from the Governor's Commission on Disability.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The item is approved. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda item 50 from the State Treasurer.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of item 50 and accepting the quarterly report, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 50 is approved. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 51 and 52 from the Department of Military Affairs and Veteran Services.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? I think these are the two reports for 19 and 20 that were accepted. Any discussion? No? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All the two reports are accepted. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 53 and 54 from the Department of Agriculture, Markets, and Food.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The items are approved. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda item 55 from New Hampshire Employment Security.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Okay. Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And 55 is approved. We're cooking. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda item 56 from the Department of Corrections.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 56 is approved. We should have done these ones first. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda item 57 from the New Hampshire Banking Department.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of item 57, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That is approved. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda item 58 from the Department of Information Technology. Please note that item 59 is not used. A motion and second. Any discussion?
Lots of questions.
No? Okay. Seeing no discussion, all in favor of item 58, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 58 is approved. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 60 through 66 from New Hampshire Fish and Game Department.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Any discussion on items 60 through 66?
Number 64, please.
Okay, Councilor Prescott, I think Colonel Jordan is here today. Answer some questions.
Thank you, Colonel. How are you?
Good morning. Ready for the question, sir. But for the record, my name is Kevin Jordan. I'm the Chief of Law Enforcement of New Hampshire Fish and Game, subbing in this morning for my new director who had a conflict in his schedule. And I do not have a slideshow, Governor. I apologize.
Well, thank you for trying to answer my question.
Yes, sir.
So the property that is being purchased today, does it have any of these same easements that are being asked the state of New Hampshire to adhere to?
I believe it does. I believe it is the same easements or similar easements to what we have on the other properties that are down there, almost 6,000 acres now.
Hmm. Now, are the easements the same that are existing on this property before we purchase it?
I'm not aware of any changes in that. That's correct. I believe it is the same.
So what is the advantage of the state of New Hampshire purchasing this land?
So I'm reading the explanation here so I can answer it accurately for you. So currently, we manage 1,100 acres in the towns of Durham and Newmarket within the Great Bay Research Reserve. The Walker Tract, this particular tract in Durham, consists of approximately 24.5 acres, and it is in the heart of the Crummet and Lumberland Creek Core Conservation Focus Area. I believe this, although small in size, this property contains oak and pine woodlands, extensive wetlands, and abuts other lands owned or leased by New Hampshire Fish and Game and other conservation partners. So conserving it will enhance the protection of nearly 3,000 acres intact, conserving forest and fresh water wetlands adjoining Great Bay.
You just mentioned that it's already conserved. The same stipulations for easements will be the same as they are today, whether we spend the money or not spend the money. Is that the case?
I don't know the answer to that, Kathy.
I don't believe that that's the case. That's why we're purchasing.
Right, I think it's part of a piece in the middle of this that we did not have easements on, and this purchase provides us with that.
I understand that you would then have the obligation of these easements, but my point is, someone else already has that obligation of the easements, is what you're saying.
I don't know that they do on that particular piece, Council. I think it's in the property surrounding that. I think this was a piece that they did not have an easement on.
Can that be confirmed? Because
We can do that.
that's pretty much what Northeast, we're purchasing it from the trust. We're purchasing this from the Nature Conservancy.
Yeah, Nature
Isn't that pretty certain that the same easements are going to transfer to us? That's what the Nature Conservancy does, and I would like to know if it's
if you could confirm it, if it's the same easements that are already existing on that property, or are we going to be obligated to more easements in, that are just like what the surrounding properties are? I just want to know if they are the same easements, why would we purchase it if it's being protected already?
May I?
Sure.
Sorry. Kathy Labonte, I'm the chief of the business division. I believe what the...
Sorry, can you use the microphone just so the folks on the phone?
I'm sorry. Kathy Labonte, I'm the chief of the business division. I believe what the difference is we have purchased several other areas around the Great Bay community from TNC, and the difference between their easements and ours is we open ours up to the public in perpetuity for hunting, fishing, and all recreational uses, whereas TNC does not always open up all their areas for hunting and fishing opportunities. But we will definitely get a definitive answer for you, sir.
Thank you. If there could be a document that you could provide, it would be best to know what the easements are and what they're going to be, a side-by-side comparison, which will then help me decide how to spend the state's money.
Certainly.
Thank you.
What's with like the table then?
I would.
The land will still be there in 2 weeks, I promise.
Okay. I do move to table.
We have a motion to table. Is there a second?
Sure.
A motion and a second. All in favor of tabling item 64 for the next meeting, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And item 64 is tabled.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you. Any further questions on any of these items? Council Mercer, don't go too far, Colonel.
Well, you can stay there, Colonel. Would you just convey to Mr. Mason that there was an issue that came up at the last meeting about a letter that had circulated, and I, for one, was hoping that at this meeting he'd have some comments to share with us in response. And I would like him to seriously consider doing that at our next meeting.
I will make him aware of this.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Bill.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or concerns on the items of official meeting? Yes, sir. Councilor Carnes.
Colonel, I have one question.
Yes, sir.
Item 65.
Yes.
There's a question on item 65.
Are you familiar with this transaction?
Which item did you have a question on?
65, the transfer of property, 259 acres.
Up on the animals, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Where does that run from?
So that begins, I actually have a map that I can share with you. So it's 1.8 miles along the Ammonoosuc River, and it begins right next to the White Mountain National Forest. I believe it's in the Deal River. If I could share this with you.
It just goes out from Littleton. We're up there, I just was wondering where it was. So it's on both sides of the river.
That's correct.
A mile and then sent to the...
Yes, on both sides of the river. Yes. Again, conserving it for public access to the brook, for fishing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all.
Is that okay? Okay. Any further questions or discussion on items for official meeting? Okay. Well, seeing none, all in favor? I'm sorry. Of items 60 through 66, with the exception of item 64, which has been tabled, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those items are approved. Thank you, sir. I now ask for motion to adopt agenda item 57 from the Department of Business and Economic Affairs.
Second.
I'm sorry, I apologize. Items 67, 68, and 69. I think those are all from Business and Economic Affairs, correct? Yep, sorry. So, do we have a motion and a second for those three items?
Yes.
Yeah.
Any discussion? Councilor Grimes. I think the Commissioner's here with us.
Good afternoon, Taylor Council Commissioner.
Two questions, Taylor. One regarding tourism money. I had a couple of calls regarding the delay on money that's going into tourism.
No,
There's a program right there.
the joint promotional program,
Thank you.
the JPP program.
Thank you.
Yeah, for budgetary reasons, right now, we've got that program on hold. We hope to get a second look at that once we get past the first of the year. But for right now, we made a decision to sort of hold back those resources for right now.
So it's currently just on hold.
That's correct.
And the second one is a little more where things go. What do you see? I mean, obviously, I think the great dichotomy is Wall Street's doing well, Main Streets are struggling. What is your perspective on Main Streets?
Well, I think for the most part, yeah, there's still some areas that we see the struggle. The hospitality industry, the restaurant industry, we're in a slow season right now for tourism anyway. We seem to have at least a small penchant for having these surges happen during shoulder seasons. As far as tourism goes, we managed to make it through the summer pretty well. But I think that a lot of the investments, and again, I mentioned this last time, that were made very quickly with the Gopher funds and the CARES Act funds back last summer were instrumental in allowing a lot of businesses to keep their doors open and their heads above water. And I think we're seeing a lot of the impact of those investments right now. When we're coming back into a surge area, there were resources that were made available. A second round of the Main Street Relief Fund has just been announced. Those awards should go out this week. That's the amount of $100 million more for business support. So I think altogether, you look at that, the unemployment rate that we continue to see now, I think we're around 4%, having been at a high at 17. We cannot say that it's been all roses for everybody, but I think as a whole right now our economy is doing quite well given the circumstances.
In your job, do you do anything with the hospitals? It's always been a great concern with many of the small hospitals.
I think for many of the sort of reasons that maybe you're asking, we don't have a direct connection with them, but we do work with hospitals from the standpoint that they provide a quality of life that's necessary, part of our workforce and business recruitment, and from the standpoint that they're some of the most important employers in a lot of communities as we run up.
No further questions.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further questions or discussion for Commissioner Caswell? Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor of items 67, 68, and 69, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those items are approved. That's great. We're almost halfway done. Technically. Moving on, I'd ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 70 through 83 from the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources. I'm going to get that at some point.
So moved.
Second.
So with a motion and a second, any discussion on any of these items? There's quite a few. Take a look. No? Okay. All in favor? Seeing no discussion, all in favor of items 70 through 83, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it, and the items are approved. Moving on, I'll ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 84, this is quite an agenda, to 110 from the Department of Environmental Services. We're doing a lot for the environment. It's going really good to see you, Commissioner Scott. Thank you for your patience. I'll give the council a few minutes on this because I know there's a variety of questions here. Could be a variety of questions.
Second.
So a motion and a second.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
did not see my notes. Governor. I
I
believe.
think, Council, I think there's one of the contracts that I need to recuse myself from. Being in the industry, having a customer who's going to receive funds. Maybe it was the last one. No? That was good.
You're good?
I do not have one, that's why it's not here.
You don't have it because it doesn't exist? You were right. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of these items from the Department of Environmental Services, items 84 through 110, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Wow, that was great. Okay. Those are approved. Moving on. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 111 through 115 from the Department of Education.